Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. And my guest today is a truly prized thespian among the Hollywood landscape and the theatrical live stage landscape. You will recognize him. I won't even say you might recognize him. You will recognize him from award-winning, as in like Best Picture-winning films such as Moonlight, Selma, there was High Flying Bird, there was 42, the incredible, one of the best of the century shows, The Knick, and only just recently, you may have also seen him in The Actor, The Dutchman, Exhibiting Forgiveness, and he has a new movie that premiered at Sundance Film Festival this year. It is Love, Brooklyn, which is what we are here to discuss, among other things. André Holland, what else do the people need to know about you? Actor, producer, I know, perhaps writer. Tell me, before we get started, what else do we need to know to establish?
You know, Jordan, I think you killed it. I don't think we need much more. That's it.
Well, I don't I throw it because I just started throwing out like multi-hyphenates, but you, from what I've gathered from reading about you speaking out various jobs that you've done and particular more recent roles like The Actor, The Dutchman, Exhibiting Forgiveness, it sounds like it is a very collaborative process. The building of like when you embark on the long-term relationship of making a film with a creator, and you often work with first-time feature filmmakers, there is a lot of conversation and a lot of community and brain trust that goes into standing up the films that you star in.
That's absolutely right. I think that started from very early on in my career. When I first came out of grad school, I was connected with this playwright at the time, Terrell Alvin McCraney, who went on to write or co-write Moonlight with Barry and a bunch of other things. And we were put together. My acting teacher had taught a couple classes at Yale where he was a student, and my acting teacher said to me one day, "There's this young writer, you absolutely have to meet him." And I went to go see his play at the Public Theater. It was like a sort of small presentation of it. And right away, I was like, man, this is special. And not only is he special as a writer, but the types of people who were in the room that day to see his work and the way in which they were engaging with the work was unlike anything I had experienced. And so I was like, man, this is going to be my guy. And so we started working together then. We made High Flying Bird together. We made Moonlight together. We've done a number of plays together and are about to do another play together in September. So that sort of community connection and like building from the ground up with people who you know and trust and love, to me is everything.
Now, was a genesis of that, like, because obviously you've done a lot in theater, and that is such a particular experience of like you're living on top of each other, like on a Broadway capacity, it's 8 shows a week, and there is such that feeling of community and like summer camp dormitory. Whereas on film, that's not necessarily a foregone conclusion. Do you find that bringing over elements of your theatrical experience is a part of your screen work, or is that just sort of a mandate throughout your creative work or your life generally, is to kind of to bring the troupe with you?
That part. I'm very much like, if I'm going, then I'm bringing my community. We all going, that's very much my mentality with pretty much everything I do. And I think theater is obviously I learned it at home growing up in Alabama in like a very small, close-knit community in which we all really had no choice but to rely on one another. And then in theater, you really learn it. You step out there on stage every night and all you've got is your scene partner, your castmates. And so I learned to listen in theater. I learned to, trust my fellow artists. And I think maybe most of all, I learned how to like really prepare myself, to participate, to play a role. So yeah, that's very much my ethic, community. And that's true of everything I do.
Well, when I was able to see Love, Brooklyn at Sundance, I was working for the festival at the time. I was working for the editorial side of it, so I was able to cover the premiere of it that you guys had. And the conversation after with you and the whole film team and the ever just magnetic and grounded DeWanda Wise, a privilege to see her in it. She's been a guest on the show, and I was so starstruck the whole time. I was just getting myself through it. But that was something that somebody in the audience asked a question about. It was a young filmmaker being like, what are your tips? And a couple people answered, and before there was the wrap up, you dove in and you're like, I just want to say one more thing. It was like, find your people, find your community. So it sounds like Love, Brooklyn, like there was obviously like Steven Soderbergh was involved in seeing this through. Roy Wood Jr., I think you said both of you are from Alabama. Like you had college connections and home connections and just broader stories with these people for dating years back before Love, Brooklyn. So it sounds like this movie, your newest film, is 100% an extension of that practice that you have really honed.
It is indeed. Thank you. I'm so glad you were there. Thank you for that, and thank you
Yeah. Oh, what a
for
beautiful
hearing what I
premiere.
said.
God, in Park City High School. I mean, few better venues than that. Like, what a beautiful affair.
It was amazing. It was such an amazing day. Um, but yeah, I mean, that you mentioned DeWanda, and when it came to casting to putting this movie together, we had taken it out to a bunch of people, and like there were people were interested but not really, and it was a whole long process. And then ultimately, it was Steven who raised his hand and said, "All right, well, why don't we figure out a way to do this?" And so my production company, along with him, we figured out a way to put the money together to get into production. And then when it came down to casting it, I think every person in the cast, yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody, I think were just phone calls that we made. Like Nicole Bahari and I know each other from way back. She was at Juilliard when I was at NYU. DeWanda and I go back to those same days, like the early theater days. Roy, like you mentioned. I mean, pretty much everybody was willing to show up and do it. Cassandra Freeman, she and I went to undergrad together, so we've known each other for ages. Like, it was really a labor of love. And I think that if I didn't have the community that I have and I hadn't cultivated those relationships, I don't think we wouldn't have been able to make the movie. I don't think those people would have shown up for us. So yeah, it's one of the most beautiful experiences. I mean, not just because of the movie itself, but because of the way in which it came together, And the last thing I'll say about it is that, like, when we were trying to, even down to like finding locations, we had so little time and so little money. And, a lot of that ended up being, hey, man, calling people, hey, man, you mind if we shoot in your restaurant from like, midnight till 4 a.m. We'll be out of there by 5 in time for your breakfast, and people said yes. So.
It's such a testament too of like when it's bringing people together that you've had with you for a long time, and it's a hallmark of not just the time spent investing in one another, but like the trust accrued to know that, like, saying yes to you, saying yes to each other, like the people that the known quantities are involved in something like that. It's like, I know I'm going to be taken care of if I do this. I know I'm not going to be kicked around. Like, I'm saying yes to this person because I know I'm not going to be taken advantage of. And in a professional landscape that can be so defined in its darker spots by opportunism, the notion of people saying yes because they know that they will feel looked after is just the quality of the investment and not just the quantity of the investment is so important.
Yeah, that's 100% right. That's 100% right. And like, that was what I told people when I called them. I said, look, we don't have the money to pay you what you are worth, or what
you are worth.
Is.
Yes.
We can't even get close to that. But one thing I can promise you is that we're going to have a good time, and we're going to eat some good food, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to try some stuff, and if you're down to have a little fun with us, then come on through. And like I said, man, fortunately they said yes. But I think even now, like for myself, as I think about this, like next, part of my career, that's what I find myself thinking about mostly, is not even material, like I used to be very like, man, I want the script to be perfect, and that this filmmaker, like very kind of selective about the things I did and didn't do. And I still have that for sure. But what's more and more important to me, the older I get, is like, who are the people that I'm gonna get to work with? And what is the like ethic? What's the environment gonna be like, That to me feels way more worth it than does like, trying to get a big payday or trying to be in something that's flashy and gets a lot of attention. So.
Well, that connects, I feel like, very well to the character that you have brought to discuss, because it takes it back to the beginnings of your collaborations and relationship with Steven Soderbergh, with, again, one of the best television shows ever, The Knick, which ran for 2 seasons on Cinemax. And you have brought your character of Algernon Edwards to discuss, yes?
I have indeed. I mean, that's one of the things. Algernon is, well, The Knick itself, I should say, is a show that was and is like near and dear to my heart. And of all the things I've done in my career, there is nothing that gets more attention than does The Knick. I mean, I would say, like, if not every day, like every other day, somebody stops me on the street and says, "Oh my God, I love The Knick. Is it coming back?" Like they people are obsessed with this show.
That is so good to hear, knowing that the show was not discovered as widely as it should have been at the time.
Yep. Yep, exactly. It's wild. I feel like we knew when we were making it that we were onto something special. And then when it came out, I think critically, people really enjoyed it. I think even the people who found the show, the audiences really loved it. It has like a crazy Rotten Tomato score. Like people really dig it. But for whatever reason, it just never quite caught on. But I feel like now there is this kind of surge of like energy around rediscovering it. I just read a thing the other day, someone sent me that said like it recently took over the #1 spot of like most streamed shows on HBO Max. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've been working for a number of years now trying to get, we've created this spinoff of it, basically that follows my character that I played, Algernon Edwards, into a slightly, a different time period, but like still kind of connected to the original hospital. And we've introduced a set of characters that we think are really, really amazing. And, now we're just looking for a home. A company that's willing to lock arms with us and go and make it, because we are ready. Barry Jenkins is on to direct, and I'm going to come back and star in it. And, some of the cast from before coming back, we've got a whole world mapped out that we're literally just waiting on someone to say, let's go. So.
Well, it is of course the story, a look into, we really show up, we're dropped into the world of the Knickerbocker Hospital in 1900 New York City. An unbelievable time of technological innovation and social progress combining with complete social stagnation and regression. And we enter the world through Dr. Thackeray. One of the best descriptions of a character I've ever heard was still Emily Nussbaum writing for The New Yorker, describing Clive Owen and his Dr. Thackeray as having angry hair, which I think of still all that. I was like, wow, he really did have angry hair. His angry hair and his white shoes. And we meet him in an opium den. And then he is woken up by one of the, I suppose, attendees at the opium den. And he goes straight to work at the Knickerbocker Hospital, where he is the crazy visionary in charge of medicine there. And you are introduced, Dr. Algernon is introduced shortly thereafter as the new, I believe it's like a assistant head of surgery. And we immediately meet you as somebody who is not welcome there. And Thack tells him, like, you're here because we are bought and paid for by this person, and they want you here, but I don't particularly have any interest in integrating my hospital in any way whatsoever, and you're welcome to leave at any time. In fact, I wish you would.
I'm beginning to think you were not told everything about me. You envisioned something different. I take it something lighter.
I did. To be frank, Dr. Edwards, I only agreed to this meeting as a courtesy to Miss Robertson, but I am certainly not interested in an integrated hospital staff.
My skin color shouldn't matter.
Well, if it doesn't matter, then why was that information held back from me?
You'll have to ask Miss Robertson.
It's also nowhere to be found on your credentials.
Is your race listed on yours?
There's no need for it to be. I grant that your background is impressive, and I'm sure there are many Negro infirmaries that will benefit from your talents. But this hospital...
This is where I'd like to be. If you would just give me a chance. In London and in Paris, I was treated as an equal, and I have no doubt...
This is New York. This is not London or Paris. You can only run away and join the circus if the circus wants you. I don't want you in my circus.
And then begins the meticulously created period piece. You can almost, it's one of those programs where you can smell it. And when you're watching it, and cocaine is being used in the medical room as well as generously by Thackeray, and you come in a highly trained, highly regarded, been practicing in Europe surgeon, and it is your mission to do good work here against things pushing back upon you that don't want you to work at all. Better that you not be there than save lives, even.
Yeah. Wow. What a wonderful description. I mean, you know what? Next time I pitch this show, I'm bringing you with me because I want you to say that.
I will say I have a way with a summary. I really have a way with a summary. And so this part comes at an unbelievable run. There's like, I think it's 2014, 15, 16. You have Selma, you have this, and you have Moonlight. Jesus. What was it that stood out in that sort of launch period about this character, of looking back on it being like, this is such a strong point of connection for me?
So many things. On the acting side of it, I'll say that it felt like it was a character that lined up, I think, perfectly with who I was at that time. In the sense that I was young and like excited and hungry and felt like trained and capable. And yet, on a personal level, felt myself bumping up against the kind of edges of possibility within the business. Like I remember early days going out for, parts in TV shows and movies in which, I clearly, I just was wrong for those parts. Sure. And then hoping and imagining like, man, there must be a character out there that allows me to express some of who I actually am, right? Like this, and then I meet this guy, Algernon, who's like intelligent and passionate and charming when he needs to be, but also kind of, tough and destructive and self-destructive at times. It just was kind of perfect. And then I think also on another level, Steven Soderbergh, has been or was then and still is now a person who's been really like the best kind of mentor and ally, in that I remember in the early days when we were on set, there were so many questions I had about television and about cameras and filmmaking. And, I really, I'd done pretty much exclusively theater at that point, a few episodic things here and there. And Steven, I think, could see my curiosity. And rather than, dismiss my my sophomoric questions, which I would hit him with sometimes, instead he was like, man, just, why don't you come over to the house sometime? We'll watch a movie and I'll explain what I mean by a French over. Or I'll explain why.
So special.
Or I'll explain why, like, this is a shot, or this is a better shot than that, So a lot of days when I wasn't working, I would come in and I would just kind of shadow him and watch him like put scenes together, and he invited me into that process. And so that got me hungry, to direct, to produce, to, and to kind of dream bigger and like, imagine myself as more than just an actor who's like waiting for the phone to ring, but really as like a maker of things. So the show represented so much to me. And then of course, I think out of that, Ava DuVernay saw me in the show and then cast me in Selma, and Moonlight came on the heels of that. And so it just, as you said, it was a really special time in my career and in my life.
Well, and something that I like reading, interviews of you talking about stuff and then dipping back into the Knick and watching you, it feels like with and as we started this conversation, such an emphasis on the community around a person, to carry them through and to get done what they want to get done. And such a defining thing about Algernon is the complete absence of community around him. Even when he's staying in housing in the Tenderloin district, and he's staying in, it kind of seems like a large like group boarding house almost. And we see him in an early episode, like it's very creatively like cut back and forth. We see like the society whites uptown who are waking up for their day and drinking their elaborate meals and having the house aides like open up the curtains for them, and you are standing in line for the common bathroom while a man behind you is trying to figure out where you bought your shoes and kind of relentlessly harassing you to give information about the shoes you're wearing.
Show us some nice shoes.
Thank you.
Some kind of fancy leather. Must have cost you heavy. Where you get a pair of shoes like that?
At a store.
Which one? Maybe I get me a pair like that. Caswell's down on 20. Tip Top on Madison.
Le Vasseur.
Le what? Where's that?
Paris.
Paris.
France.
I know where Paris is, nigga. You lucky you was next.
It's not like, oh, well, I'm here. He doesn't feel like I'm here among my people. And yet going to a party uptown, he is certainly, when there's a fundraiser among the rich folks, he certainly does not feel unconditionally as though he is welcomed among them. You are truly an island in the landscape of the show.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that was, again, one of the things that really moved me about him, is that he felt like he was trapped between these two places. And I think that's where his sense of rage came from. There were these scenes that we would do where he would, go out alone at night and drink and then get into these kind of, fist fights in the back of the bar in the alleyways. And, when I first read that, I remember thinking, why in the world is this guy doing that? Like, why would he do that? he's a surgeon. Why is he going to even risk hurting his hands or damaging himself? But the deeper I got into it and the more I read about doctors at that time on whom I think the writers were drawing inspiration, and not even just doctors, but just like Black intellectuals and thinkers and artists who were trying to figure out a way to live full lives, in this environment in which, like, so few things were possible, were available to them. The sense of rage that they expressed and experienced it just all made sense to me. And in a way, I think that when I allowed myself to imagine myself in that circumstance, I realized that, like, I also have some of that rage, I think, at times, for my own experience, but also like for the experience that I watched my father go through in his life, my mom go through in her life.
Which absolutely comes up for the character of Algernon, like direct conversations with his elders and family of,
exactly.
I'm like, you're asked at one point, like, why are you have had more offered to you as a Black man than almost anybody has. Like, why are you still so angry? And that's exactly what he gets into for what they made you, what they made you do, that they, when you tried to look up, they made you cast your eyes down and you kept looking down. Like, you could help me with any that's toward this end of season 2. And you're talking to him about, like, I think your father about, like, what you were capable of and what he helped you become because he was so capable, and the potential he was not allowed to live up to because of the ceiling pushed so hard down on him, even if you were afforded to ascend higher.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's absolutely right.
I used to sit down in the stables and do my homework while you tended the horses. There wasn't a subject that you couldn't help me with. Smartest man I ever knew. You could have been something more. Something great. Not just another man's coachman. I am angry. I'm angry that they made you turn your eyes to the ground. And then they made you too scared to look up. Boy, you have no idea what I've seen. If I hadn't learned to turn to God, I wouldn't be here, and neither would you.
Yeah, man, hearing you talk about it makes me want to get back on set and do it some more, because it was such a good story. And I think, one of the things that we were interested in doing with this new season of it, this spinoff, is jumping the story forward in time and imagining, like, what could have happened to Algernon, say, in 15 years later, 20 years later. Or, what might his life be like if he were not in an environment in which he is the only, but what if we put him, let's say, in like Harlem at the beginning of the Harlem Renaissance, right? When he's surrounded by other artists and, thinkers and, people who were trying to make things. Like, who would he be if he were in that kind of an environment? So hopefully when we get to make this show, we'll get a chance to dig deeper into that.
Well, and we watch too, like, it doesn't really spoil it because so much happens, guys, but like what we see, the very last thing of Algernon at the end of season 2 as the show ends, is knowing that his career in physical medicine is probably going to have to change. For that reason, I won't spoil, but we see him almost kind of at a beginning of a stage of analysis, like mental health, psychotherapy, like he's going perhaps into a new avenue of medicine. And watching that and then thinking of you again, like Harper Road Films, your production company, and becoming a professional who, like you said, doesn't want to just sit by the phone waiting for the call, and as best one can, making their own luck, making their good fortune and generating their own work. I wanted to hear from you about, like, developing into work beyond in front of the camera to create opportunity for yourself, where perhaps, as you say, you're not the one of one standing around. And certainly at this launch pad of the Knick, again, there is Selma, there is Moonlight, where you certainly seem to be working among community. And then now with these films that we've just been talking about, it's a similar situation. But I wanted to hear about what, amassing that community along the way and coming to that kind of self-determination, that transition point for you, and when you knew you needed to make this company and do what you could with your own imprint to create your space and your lane.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. It's interesting that I mentioned to you before we came on that this weekend I had a party at my place here in Brooklyn. It's the first time I've thrown a party, and I was so nervous. But in the end, it actually worked out. So many people came, and I was like, oh God, is anybody going to show up? But it actually ended up being
of
perfect.
all the firsts you've done, you're like, and now first house party.
Seriously. But what was fascinating was like I invited this group of younger actors who recently graduated from NYU, which is where I went to school. They also came. They had just come from a reading of a new piece, new play. And when I saw them come in, I thought, man, I know I've seen their work, and I know that these young folks are extremely talented, like just fantastic younger actors. And when I think about like my company, right? It started as a project to create opportunities for myself, frankly. I wanted a way to make the kind of work that I wanted to make and to give myself a chance to play characters that I felt like I could play. But what it's evolved into, and that's happened. High Flying Bird was a product of the company. Like that was an idea that we developed and made. Love Brooklyn, the same. But what's happened is that it's turned into a much larger project in which what I'm really passionate about doing is creating space for other folks. Like people like these young actors who came to my house the other night. It to me breaks my heart that these people can go to school for 3 years and, study all the best and do all the best, and then come out of school and not be able to get an agent or not be able to get an opportunity to even try. And so to me, I hope that Harper Road will be a company wherein young writers and directors and actors, musicians, people can come and say, I want to make something. I got an idea of something I want to make, and I'm willing to do some work to make it happen. And we can put them in the room with the right kinds of folks and offer them some support and guidance in the way that Steven offered it to me, and some patience and help them make the thing that only they can make. That to me feels like a worthwhile way to spend my time.
A thing that has stuck with me so much since seeing it at Sundance was getting to watch the premiere screening as well of Sorry Baby, which is obviously like blown up out of the festival. And that was produced by Barry Jenkins and Pastel. And I was so taken aback when Eva Victor, writer, director, and star of that movie, talked about when she shadowed her friend Jane Schoenbrunn, her friend Jane, on the set of I Saw the TV Glow. And she was directing this story that is very much pulled from her own life and experience. And she talked about how Barry Jenkins, they essentially like did practice runs to allow her to learn how to direct before she jumped in to making this movie. They staged certain scenes and then they would review after and be like, see how you didn't get coverage here? That means you're not going to have the options that you need in the editing bay. And the fact of like investing in a filmmaker like that beforehand, just to give them the confidence that they need to go into set and maximize the limited scope and scale of resources that you have on any independent production. My heart swelled at hearing that. And the value of mentors and teachers and people willing to put the hand out once they have gone up a rung on the ladder is just so indispensable. And unfortunately not a foregone conclusion. So it's like, it has to be something you have to proactively pursue because it doesn't just happen for people.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I think about, it's so wonderful that, Barry and we're doing that. We're able to do that for that movie. With Love Brooklyn, we had a similar situation in that we had a first-time director who, was passionate about making a story, but hadn't made a feature before. And, it can be challenging to convince financiers to invest, as to invest in a first-time director. And so, we thought of it as an opportunity really to create space for this director to go for it. Steven understood that as well. And so I think he trusted me and me and my producing partners went out and we made it happen. And we didn't have the benefit of a trial run. We were kind of like off to the races from day one,
For sure.
So there was a lot of learning along the way, a lot of challenges that we ran into. And, a lot of times it was all hands on deck trying to solve problems, the problems that come up when you sometimes work with a first-time filmmaker. Mm-hmm. But what we wanted to do is to create an environment where, like, it's okay to not know. It's okay to not, get it right the first time or to not know what that thing is. And, like, we can learn together. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is what's important.
It's time for a break, but I'll be right back with André Holland. And then I will have one quick thing before I go at the very end of the show in tribute to the legendary actor Graham Greene, who it was announced passed away earlier this week. So stick around to celebrate Graham Greene at the very end.
I'm Emily Fleming.
I'm Jordan Morris.
And I'm Matt Lieb.
We are real comedy writers.
Real friends.
And real cheapskates.
On every episode of our podcast, Free with Ads, we ask, why pay for expensive streaming services when you can get free movies from apps with weird names?
Each week, we review the freest movies the internet has to offer. Classics like Pride and Prejudice.
Cult classics like Point Break.
And holy what did I just watch? Classics like Teen Witch.
Tune in every week as we take a deep dive into the internet's bargain bin.
Every Tuesday on MaximumFun.org or your favorite pod place.
The Flophouse is a podcast where we watch a bad movie and then we talk about it.
Guys, how does E.T. poop?
Well, he's not that regular, but as he's gotten older.
He has 2 cloacas, one under each arm.
No, I was just looking forward to you going through the other ways in which Wild Wild West is historically inaccurate.
You know how much movies cost nowadays when you add in your popped corn and your bagel bites and your cheese fritters?
You can't go wrong with a Henry Cavill mustache. Here at Henry Cavill Mustaches, the only supplier.
The Flophouse. New episodes every Saturday. Find it at MaximumFun.org.
You have a couple great quotes that I really like from an interview that you gave, and then from this post-show Q&A. You talked about wanting in Love Brooklyn to make a love story, to just make a movie where you could set the camera on black actors, on black folks, and just watch them exist, which you, I think, made the very good point of. You said, put a camera on black people and just let them exist. Maybe that's a radical thing, to watch black folks live and love and try to figure shit out with each other. And that was running through my head as I watched The Knick again. And I went back and I got into an old AV Club article, just like truly the pinnacle of at peak TV, the writing that the AV Club did on television. You guys, it's really still the standard, like highlighting the directors of each individual episode, the writers of each individual episode, like really showcasing the talent behind these things. They, in writing about an episode, the one that really digs into the eugenics movement that is surging in the era, and the horrible Dr. Gallinger who is resentful of your status at the hospital. He's eugenics curious, and he's getting into this movement because he's fearing his own irrelevancy in an advancing age.
Dr. Edwards, how much have you studied the eugenics movement?
I've read several articles in Lancet and in other medical journals.
And you believe that's enough to discredit an entire field of study? A field which is now being taught in hundreds of medical schools and universities.
This isn't about a field of study. It is about intention.
But Dr. Gallinger's intentions were, in his words, for the greater good.
Yes, for the greater good of whom? Himself? You, Dr. Phelps?
Mankind. Eugenics is, in my opinion, a very legitimate and necessary study. So much so, I've added it to the curriculum at my own Columbia Medical College.
I just have to shout out what the AV Club wrote, because they said this episode in particular gets at the heart of the Knick, or maybe its skeleton, which is a panorama across a rotten establishment. Educators teaching eugenics, a judge taking the law into his own hands, a preacher putting on a show, socialites pretending they're role models, and life and death being decided by Tammany Hall, like an authority. The rich and powerful are rich and powerful because they are the best, morally, intellectually, pigmentedly people. So here's a good look at them running the world in everyone else's supposed best interests. And, like, you could snatch that right out of 2025.
Yes, you
And
could.
I read it, and I was just like... reading that and feeling how resonant that was for a show made in 2015 about a time that was a century ago, and then hearing you talk about the perhaps radical notion of simply filming black folks living their lives in a way that doesn't revolve around violence.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Like, we've always known that history echoes, but with the pace of advancement more rapid all of the time, exponentially increasing in its rapidity perpetually. Now the echoes of history echo things that were even closer to us than they are at each successive generation. Like, it feels like we only have to echo 5 years ago and people have already memory hold everything to the point where they can't like take the knowledge from it and then advance forward without stumbling over the hurdles of history again. And I wanted to hear from you about someone who worked in the show and who plays a character faced with a panel of doctors taking the side of an unrepentant eugenicist and telling Algernon why eugenics is the cutting edge of science and it is a valid and real discipline that will be taught at Columbia Medical School. And then to make a work in 2025 that is radical from its approach to simply like the routine and mundane loves and lives and days of Black folks. Like, it's all just like condensing down in my brain and it's driving me crazy. So I just wanted to hear you talk about it.
No, it's beautiful the way you put it. And thank you for referencing that arc. I'm gonna go back and read that because that's actually
if you would like to know, the article is called "The Discreet Harm of the Bourgeoisie."
Ooh, that's a title.
I know, right? I was like, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
That's dope. Yeah, I think, hearing you say that makes me think back to how exciting it was to work on it. I remember us having these conversations about, with the writers, with Michael and Jack, about all of these issues and how we could, wondering how we could build a show that allowed us space to talk about things like this, like race and class and gender and, abortion. All the things that the show sort of traffics in without it feeling, preachy or obvious or on the nose. And I think the writers did a really excellent job of folding that stuff in such a way that it didn't feel like it was, foregrounded, but that it feels like the thing that it actually, like the way that it actually feels today, right? That it's like, it is the air we breathe. It's like the water we swim in, these sort of structures and these things that we have about our lives that we've accepted as being, inevitable and like uncontestable. And you're right. Like, I think that's why we still are wrestling with the same sorts of things today in 2025, because I think that there is on some level like a refusal to even acknowledge that these are that like this is the water that we swim in, right? There's this constant like shifting of the narrative and saying, well, no, it's not that, it's something else, or there's some other there's some reason why this is the way that it is. But I feel like if we could just sort of get to a place where we could together like accept the like ontological totality of this mess. I think that's one of the things that the show did really brilliantly, is that these things you're talking about, like the eugenics plot and all the issues that the show sort of deals with, they are just a part of the world that these people inhabit, and Algernon living on sort of stepping into that world is able to start to see, in a kind of Du Boisian way. He's kind of coming out from behind the veil and saying, well, wait a minute, like what are these structures? What are these things? That are producing these kinds of outcomes. And I think that's one of the reasons I want to go back to investigate the show again, in like a slightly different time period. But again, like we're still here today wrestling with the same mess. The show was really a kind of a master work of Steven Soderbergh and the writers to build a narrative that felt compelling and interesting and like hyper modern, but that also was really honest about the past.
I feel like when the show was made in 2015, you watch the just bald expressions of racism and the misogyny. Mm-hmm. In 2015, I feel like there was something more to be aghast about in seeing the naked bigotry. And now we've entered a time where that doesn't actually feel... It's like, oh, we're back. There were the people had their polite hats on for a while. It was never gone. People had their polite hats on for a while. And I struggle with the sort of... fear of ever-present threat and danger, and also the relief of honesty, of knowing that you're not guessing anymore. You're not decoding language because it's simply not being delivered in ciphers, Yeah. And I wonder, like, from somebody who is, like, in front of financiers and is working to get these stories made, these perhaps radical notions of people existing outside of a white hegemony. Like, is there... I don't know. I wonder about your divide between Well, I guess, I don't know. I suppose a quote from Algernon answers this question where you're talking to Cornelia, the head of the hospital's daughter who sort of runs day-to-day operations, and she's so outraged at the shit that you're experiencing, and you tell her, like, you're upset because you don't expect this. I do.
They assigned you this.
With their compliments.
Well, what about the empty space next to Christensen's old office?
Say they have another use for it.
And your medical work?
I've been ignored, mostly, and barely been allowed to perform any task beyond the skills of a first-year medical student. And as for my teaching, well...
You can't accept this. You're the deputy chief of surgery.
A position they believe I hold because of your family, Cornelia. I expect these things. You're upset because you don't.
Yeah.
And it... and I wonder sort of what you do to keep your peace in, like, even if you've always known the truth of the world, to see the mask off and the nakedness of it once again in a way that echoes earlier, grosser times, though of course we've certainly not solved everything and progress has not won. How do you keep your peace amid the exposure of the ugliness at its most just unrepentant form?
Such a good question. I appreciate that. I think, you know, what comes to mind for me is thinking about the Knick. There were a handful of scenes in that show which felt really, really important to me to preserve. Mm-hmm. And they weren't necessarily the ones that were the most dramatic or dynamic scenes, but they were the handful of scenes in which we got to see Algernon at rest, at peace. Mm-hmm. For example, in season 2, there's a scene where he and Opal go out dancing. Now, their relationship was fraught and there was a lot of tension there, but the fact that this is a man who, you know, living in the world that he's living in and carrying the weight of all the things that he's carrying, still can find a way to dance, to express joy, felt really important to me. And I think that's one thing that sometimes gets lost when we think about struggle, particularly as it relates to Black folks, is that, you know, although life has been difficult for, you know, a very long time, people still lived, you know, and like we still do live. I think, you know, just to circle back to the beginning of our conversation, this party I had this weekend, you know, it's like, it felt like an opportunity to see. I wish you could have seen it. It was so beautiful to see all these people in the backyard. Just
New York on a summer night, Brooklyn on a summer evening.
It was a vibe. But just the joy, you know, that just entered the room when we all got together was magical. And so I think, to me, what I do to keep myself sane is trying my best to stay connected to community, to the community of people who got me here. The ones who I feel accountable to, you know, the ones who will call me out if I get it wrong, but the ones who I know love and care about me and want the best for me. That to me is where I find my peace and my sustenance.
Well, I guess then my last question will be to in terms of like sense of place, like New York is the cradle of your of so much of your community. And the Knick is a story of New York at just an unbelievable tumultuous time. It's like we're at one of my favorite things about what the show does is how it introduces like momentous details in history through just mundanity. And like we're at a dinner party and Thomas Edison is making a wax recording of a man, the rich man, like talking into like a gramophone speaker. And one of my favorite things that's ever happened on television is when they get the x-ray machine in the hospital and somebody puts their face right in front of it. And he's like, okay, stand here for 2 hours. I'll be back. And just fucking naked and like exposed brain and skull to the x-ray. He's just gonna stand staring at it until it creates its image, pouring radiation into him. He'll be there for a few hours. And and so like seeing like the city at this like chaotic and like birthing time in 1900, and then we have Love Brooklyn. It's called Love Brooklyn. Like, this is a story of people, and it's a story of place, and it is a story of loving and living in a place that is changing. And I wanted to hear from you specifically about Love Brooklyn as a New York story and what it means to you as a New York story.
It means so much to me. I think, this neighborhood, I live in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, and I lived in Fort Greene before that. I've, been here for a long time. So I've lived in a lot of neighborhoods, and I've seen a lot of transformation. And it's been like destabilizing at times to see just how fast the landscape here is shifting, and how many people are being displaced, or, are fighting to hold on, or, and yet there are still like people here, and like pockets of people here, and communities here, who, people, I went out for a walk this morning, and I can't tell you the number of, people I saw sitting on their stoops with their little ones, like reading a book, or, an elderly person walking to the corner store to get her thing. Like, yesterday I saw a group of women sitting on the stoop playing spades, at 5:00 in the evening. I thought, man, there's like something so special about this that I feel like I want to capture, to honor. I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and I want to preserve it. And I think with Love Brooklyn, that's what we wanted to do, was to make a movie that did two things. One, it allowed us to, as you said, witness this group of Black people, not wrestling with like some big dramatic situation, but simply just saying, all right, how do I get from like A to B in this relationship, in this like complicated relationship I'm having, right? And at the same time, watch them do that against a landscape that is shifting at light speed. Mm-hmm. And like, how do you make a home in a place that's like when the ground underneath your feet is like always shifting, and can sometimes feel like hostile towards your own existence, So yeah, it's Love Brooklyn. It's about place. It's about belonging. It's about love. It's about community. It's about, all the things that I'm really interested in right now. I hope people dig it. I'm excited to see the conversations it starts.
Well, that's it. That's all that I'm heartbroken to be at the end of time with you. I've so been looking forward to this conversation. You're such a passionate and loving and generous speaker. And I'm so grateful that you gave us time to have a conversation today on the podcast, Andre. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. And thank you for being so kind and generous, and for thinking so much about the show. You clearly like really dig it, and have done a lot of thinking on it.
Oh yeah, this was appointment viewing. When I lived in San Francisco, my roommate, whose wedding I'm going to go to in Brooklyn in a couple weeks, we were obsessed with this. Wow. And so when you said the Knick, I was like, well, I am jumping at this opportunity.
Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about it again when we get back. We can see our new spinoff going. So
consider me a part of the team propaganda for season 3. Like I will write the oral history when the time is ready. But yes, thank you so much for your time today. And I'm so grateful to get the chance to talk to you. You're such a tremendous figure and professional and talent in the industry.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to André Holland. This was the conversation I was hoping to have with him when I watched Love Brooklyn premiere at the Sundance Film Festival this year, and watch him speak so wonderfully on stage about the process of making the movie and working with all the people involved. Love Brooklyn is in theaters right now. Get out there, support the little movies that could. It's summer season, it's box office season. That means Fantastic Four, that means Superman, but it also means Love Brooklyn. So get out there. And now, it is with a heavy heart that we address that one quick thing before I go. Trailblazing Native actor Graham Greene passed away this week. And what a figure. He was always just right in whatever he was in, whether it was, in the scope of what this man did as an actor. Dances with Wolves, of course, will be one of his highest profile roles. He was also in movies like Maverick, Die Hard with a Vengeance, the best Die Hard, I will have you know. He was in the Twilight Saga New Moon. He was in my favorite Jessica Chastain movie, Molly's Game. He was also in The Green Mile. He also appeared in the series Reservation Dogs. I mean, he has been acting since the 1980s. And what Clear Cut. Oh my God. If you guys have not seen Clear Cut, that came after Dances with Wolves, and with a high profile credit like that coming before, I feel like you can sort of get lost with something like Clear Cut, an absolutely ferocious movie coming after. I could just sit here and scroll through his IMDb and like tell you credits all day long, but there's no summing up the influence of an actor, again, native actor like Graham Greene, the power of what he was able to accomplish on screen, even as a still figure with a thunderous presence. It's just go seek out a Graham Greene performance. Go seek out the early works, the middle works, the works that came closer to the very end. That's it. Again, I could just sit here and read obituaries about him, but I just wanted to, from my heart, say he will be missed. His impact is indelible, and we are lucky to have lived in the time of being able to take in Graham Greene performances as they came out for the past longer than I have been alive, practically, for the past more than 30 years, 40 years. And that's it. That's our show. We did it. And Graham Greene, you live in our hearts, you live in our screens, you live in our physical media collections forever. Again, get out there and see Clear Cut. That's it. That's our show. You can keep up with us wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us wherever you are listening to get every new episode in your feed as it drops. You can follow us on Instagram to find out more at Feeling Seen Pod. We are also on Blue Sky, where you can just search Feeling Seen. And if you want to follow me, I am JorCrew on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'll get back over there, I'm sure, eventually. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported directly by you.